And we're back with the show. This is the PCC Multiverse. My name is Joe Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate you being part of the broadcast here today. Week 6 in the NFL is already upon us, and I'll tell you what, goes by fast this season. I'm telling you, it just seemed like the other day we were still talking about preseason and all that good stuff going on. Yeah. But Week 6 is here. I promise I won't say break a leg, because after I did, J.J. Watt ended up breaking his leg, so I won't go that far. But we have a man who hopefully will not break his leg. He is the man, the myth, the legend from ffpaydirt.com, also as well the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast Facebook group, and of course the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast, which you can catch new episodes every Tuesday and Saturday on Apple Podcasts, Libsyn, Player.fm, and also Overcast.fm as well. It's Tyler Baker. What's up, my friend?
I'm doing well, buddy. How are you doing?
Not too bad, not too shabby. It's just another great weekend here in October. Looking forward to it indeed. In Week 6 in the NFL, a lot is upon us. Showed you my lineup earlier because I posted on the great Facebook group, the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast, and I truly appreciate all the feedback I got back from it. And I go ahead and I made those changes accordingly, so I'm all set with my team. But we know there are a lot of people out there who are still undecided on what to do and how to go about making the small changes that they need to make at last-minute things and whatnot. So I told you I would get you prepared on and talk about a couple little things in regards to some questions that I have on running backs, because I know that is a big issue right now with fantasy owners, is finding quality running backs at this point in time. So seeing how there might be a little bit of an issue trying to get running backs, trade for, pick up waiver wires, or might be at the end of the roster, who are some running backs that you're looking forward to this weekend, and who do you think might produce that, well, you know, outside of the top 5, it's really pretty much a crapshoot at this point in time?
It gets swampy after those first couple of guys, but there are actually quite a few guys out there. Again, nothing stellar, but there are some guys out there. There was a big trade this week that sent Adrian Peterson to the Arizona Cardinals. Now, don't expect too much out of Adrian Peterson. Years ago, back in Minnesota, when he had a not so good offensive line, defenses would stack the box. He didn't care. He still got yards. This is a much older version of Adrian Peterson, and this could be the worst offensive line that he's ever played behind. So
that's what I've seen reports so far.
Yeah, they're not good. They lost their best run blocking guard in Mike Empanada, and it's just not a good situation there. But there should be a lot of good opportunity. As far as guys you might be able to find on the waiver wire, Elijah McGuire is a guy that I like a lot this week. He plays for the Jets, and they are playing the New England Patriots, and the Patriots defense has been a little porous, and so he can also catch balls out of the backfield. Now, Matt Forte, their other running back, hasn't practiced in weeks, and Bilal Powell, their featured back, may not play this week. So Elijah McGuire could be the only guy there. Now, there were some devastating injuries in New York to their receiver core. This week they go against Denver. Now, you are not going to see a lot of production from the receivers that they have in Denver. Denver has really good cornerbacks. What I think you are going to see is I think you're going to see a lot of Shane Vereen. That guy should catch a lot of balls out of the backfield. If you're going to attack Denver, it's going to be in the middle of the field. You're going to stay away from those outside cornerbacks because they are just too good. So Shane Vereen is somebody you might want to pick up. There are some other guys out there. Duke Johnson is poised to have a good game. There's also an injury to Carlos Hyde in San Francisco. Matt Breida is kind of his backup, and they're kind of sharing the workload. If something happens to Carlos Hyde, Matt Breida is probably still available on your waiver wire. So as far as guys that you can just go pick up, those are a couple. I think in Baltimore, Buck Allen, Jabari Sallin, I think he's poised to have a pretty big game against Chicago. So there are some pretty good plays out there. And if you have any questions, of course, go to the Facebook group and ask a question, because when you're setting your lineup, every single little advantage you can get is going to matter, especially at this point in the season. Every little advantage you can get really does matter.
It does indeed. And once again, this is Tyler Baker from the Fantasy Football Pater podcast. You can catch him every Tuesday and Saturday with podcasts straight to Apple Podcasts, Libsyn, Overcast, and Player.fm. And remember, like he said, Fantasy Football Pater podcast Facebook group. You go there, you ask your questions all the time as far as, what lineups should I make? Maybe go for trades. I saw a couple trade offers this week that hey, I need help. Is this a good trade or not? Those kind of things are available all the time with the great guys like yourself, Tyler, that run Fantasy Football Pater podcast.
There's a couple of us. There's a couple of us up there answering questions, and we don't always agree, but we will always tell you why we're making the suggestions that we're making.
That's absolutely indeed. When I set up my lineup and I said, "Is this going to be okay?" I got some responses back from you and everybody else in the gang that said that's there, and it's not just a one answer. Okay, that's fine. That's it. You said this is okay, but you need to take care of this, and this. Sure. And of course, as well, I got more responses. You need to take care of this, and maybe this. Try this lineup change, changing over from wide receiver to a flex. Just great suggestions indeed. The Fantasy Football Pater podcast Facebook group. You got to join up today and check it out. I want to ask one more thing as far as wide receivers are concerned, because there's still plenty of wide receiver opportunities that are out there. Who may be, hiding in the woods, whatnot, maybe a name that may be out there, or someone that maybe someone should focus on that's maybe riding on the bench that might have a good, strong weekend? Because like we were talking about, running games are really hard to find. And if that's the case, the wide receivers will benefit from it.
There's a couple of guys. Corey Davis, the first-round pick in Tennessee. Now, he's not going to play this week, but he will come back. He's only played one full game. It was the first week, and he had 10 targets. And he had 10 targets without playing in the preseason. So he is going to be a big part of this offense. You won't get him this week. Well, you can get him, but you won't be able to play him this week. But next week, he's supposed to come back. Also, the LA Chargers first-round draft pick, Mike Williams, he is supposed to make his debut this week. I'm not expecting huge things immediately from him, but he was a first-round draft pick, and they've been, when asked about it, they said that they have plays already drawn up for him, like they are ready to roll with him. So those are a couple guys that you can probably get off the waiver wire that have very, very good potential to make an impact. Now in Cleveland, they made a quarterback change. I've had my eye on a guy named Ricardo Lewis. He is a guy that really shone in camp, and it's taken a little bit of time for him to get a part of the offense. He had a pretty good week last week with the quarterback change and with them needing a spark. I think Ricardo Lewis is posed to have a pretty big week. Also, Detroit is getting Galladay back. And that's a guy that really showed at the beginning of the season. He's been hurt for a couple of weeks. I'm sure a lot of fantasy owners have already dropped him. So that's a guy that you could find on the waiver wire. And then, of course, in New York, where they're just completely decimated there. If you can find a way to get Sterling Shepard, he's not going to play this week, but if you can find a way to get him, that's a guy you really want on your team, because that's the only true good receiver that they have. There's also a guy named Roger Lewis that is on that team. Haven't seen a lot out of him. We do know that he's good going downfield. He can track deep balls. So if there's like a home run shot there, it's him. But again, in New York, I think you're looking at Shane Vereen and also Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram, the rookie tight end, has been really good this year. He was third on the team in targets before Beckham and Marshall went out. So Evan Ingram at tight end, if you can manage to get him on your team, maybe work a trade or something, I think he's going to have a really big second half of the year.
That's awesome news indeed. Great information there for you. Once again, Tyler Baker from the Fantasy Football Pater podcast. Got to check it out. Apple Podcasts and Libsyn and Overcast.fm, Player.fm, just great indeed. And also check out his site, ffpater.com. One last thing before we go, it's always ends up with one of the most, one of the premier slot as far as quarterbacks are concerned. what are some of the quarterbacks that you think might be not so good bets to, and ones that you might want to stay away from this weekend because of matchups, what have you?
Yeah, well, Sam Bradford lasted just a little bit into the game last week before his knee started bothering him. I think he's pretty much droppable now, and it's a shame because he was looking really good. So that's somebody, if he's on your team, you can probably go ahead and cut bait with. Derek Carr looks like he wants to try to play. When he first got hurt, it was a 2 to 4 week injury. This will be just under 2 weeks, him coming up on Sunday. If he does play, I don't think he'll be 100%. Marcus Mariota is also dealing with a hamstring injury. Right now, it's looking at 50-50. He's been practicing. He's been doing a little bit more, but he's been limited in practice. And with the type of game that he plays, he uses his legs a lot. He'll take off running. You don't want a hamstring injury on a mobile quarterback. So he may or may not play this week. It's still kind of up in the air. So those are probably the big names. Again, there was a quarterback change in Cleveland. If Andrew Luck maybe is available in your league, maybe go get him. They're targeting week 8 is the latest that I've heard. The realistic time for him to come back. When he comes back, I think that's drastically going to change that offense.
That's Tyler Baker from the Fantasy Football Paydirt podcast. What's coming up on your Saturday program before we head on out?
Well, it all comes down to what happens on that Friday injury report. The Friday injury reports come out Friday afternoon, tells us where all these guys are. So I'm going to study that and then start digging a little bit deeper into these matchups. I can already tell you that with this Tampa Bay game, I don't like Mike Evans going up against Patrick Peterson. So I'm expecting that Deshaun Jackson is probably going to be the guy there in Tampa Bay. So just little things like that I'll kind of touch on my Saturday podcast.
That's great indeed. It's a can't miss podcast for all you fantasy football owners out there. And I'm going into fantasy basketball myself too. So we'll have to delve into that at some point in time down the road because it's definitely that season indeed as well. So fantasy sports, there you go, all over the place, but it all starts with fantasy football. And there's no better place to go than ffpaydirt.com, Fantasy Football Paydirt podcast on Apple Podcasts, Libsyn, Overcast.fm, Player.fm, and also join their Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast Facebook group today to ask all your questions on your fantasy football team. Tyler, as always, it's been a great pleasure, my friend. I know you're back there on the East Coast and it's late for you, but we truly appreciate you sticking around right here on the PCC Multiverse.
Thank you, my friend. It's always a pleasure to come on and talk to you.
You got it, my friend. As always, thank you so much, and good luck this weekend in fantasy football.